I don't care who you're selling to or who you're meeting with. You need to start every single meeting just like this. Let's get going. All right, everybody, welcome to the Slow Pitch. And today we're going to talk about how to start your meeting so that you put yourself into a position where you're not like every other salesperson. And that's not an easy task to do because here's the thing. Every single person that you meet with is thinking almost the same thing. Think about it this way. The first thing that they're thinking is, okay, here we go. I'm going to meet with another salesperson and I know what this is going to go like. They're going to try to sell me. They're going to sell me hard. They're going to work on me. They're going to grind me down and they're going to make me buy. That's what they're going to do. And I'm going to regret buying. I can just feel it. Or some variation of that, right? That's kind of how people think when they sit down with a salesperson. It's like, I don't look forward to this. It's never a pleasant experience. Sorry, it's just not. The other thing that they're probably thinking is that they don't want to lose control of the conversation or give away too much information because they feel like that's going to be used against them in a sense, right? So they feel like, I don't want to tell them too much. They become defensive. In defensive, I just mean that they're limiting the information that they're giving you. They're making you work for that information. And I think part of this conversation today is going to be more about how do you lower those defenses? How do you make them open up a little bit more without even really having them realize you're doing that? Because it's really important that if they don't open up, you're not going to get the information you need in order to actually know whether or not they need your product or not. That's the way you end up doing it. If you end up going through the process and you find out that they don't need your product or service, then you don't sell. I mean, that's just the way it works. But if they do need it, then you probably need to work to the next step. But you can't get that information if they're being very, very defensive. The other thing that they're thinking is, how long is this going to take? Like you sent me an invite for this meeting and it says 60 minutes. Is this really going to take 60 minutes? Should it take 60 minutes? I don't feel like it needs this long. So they're thinking these things and you know what it's going to take. It's probably not going to take all of 60 minutes or it may take all of 60 minutes, but you know what it's going to probably take. They don't, and they feel like it's over the amount of time that it needs, right? And so you need to make sure that they're feeling comfortable knowing this is what it's going to take. So think about it this way. If they're thinking all of these things, they're not going to open up as much. They're defensive. They're not open to having a conversation. And the other thing that they're thinking is that they think there's a hard close coming. There's going to be a point where you're going to be like, okay, set on the dotted line. Okay, how do we make this happen, right? How do we close this deal? Like that's what they're expecting from you, or they think they're going to see that. And the other thing that they're thinking is what if I say no? This is going to get really awkward really fast. I don't want to be the awkward person who wastes an hour for the salesperson that comes in my office. Maybe they don't care, but they're wasting an hour of their own time. And so how do I say no after we've spent so much time? And those are the things that they're thinking. And that's really important to know when you're meeting with somebody, what they're thinking in their head. So let's flip this on the other side now. What are the things that you're working on or thinking when you walk into a meeting? And these are legitimate things that you probably are thinking before you walk into a meeting. They're based on fear. And I say that in a nice way, right? First of all, your biggest concern is you're not going to be able to give them the information that they need to make a decision. You're saying in your head, what if I don't get a chance to pitch the information that I need? What if I can't show them what I have? What if we get into this conversation and I never get to the point where I can show them what we can do for them? That's a problem, right? So you need to have that ability to do that. What if they don't want to hear me out? That's another question. What if I'm just wasting my time as a salesperson? What if I walk in there, I spend 30 minutes, 45 minutes, plus my travel time, plus whatever, right? And my prep time, all the things that I've done to get ready for this meeting. And I walk in and after 30 minutes, they go, you know what, get out. And that's it. Like, oh, you're out of time. Sorry. And then you didn't even get a chance to pitch. You didn't get a chance to talk about it. None of it. And now you've wasted your time. So you're thinking that yourself, right? And you don't want to do that. The other thing you might be thinking is I need to say X, Y, Z, whatever that is. I got to get this message across, or I need to be able to tell them this information. And if you feel that way, just let's take a break and say, no, I don't need to tell them anything. Really, that's what you need to think about beforehand. So that's sometimes what people think is they need to say certain things, or I need to say these lines. No, let's get that out of your head right now, okay? And obviously, if they cut me short, that's okay. That's okay, all right? So let's get into some of the different things or tactics that you need to do to be able to overcome their fears, their problems, their issues in their head, and your own issues in your head. Let's get into some of those things now. So the first thing you need to do in order to make it so that everybody feels less defensive, okay, really that's what it comes down to, is to lay down some ground rules. These are the rules of my engagement and our engagement. This is what we're going to do. Think about it in terms of baseball. Before the baseball game, here's what happens. The umpire takes the key people out into the field and say, okay, we're all in agreement here that when you hit a ball and it goes to the right of this foul line, and if it's hit to that side or to the right side of that, it is a foul ball. That counts as a strike. And if it goes to the left side of this particular line, that's a strike. If you hit over the wall out there, that's a home run. And they go through some basic, here's the park rules. If it hits this part and it bounces back in, that's a ground rule double, whatever the things might be, right? So each park has its own separate little nuances that they want to make sure that everybody's on the same page with, so that when that happens, they know what the result of that means, and here's what we're going to do, okay? That's how every baseball game starts, and it's the same in every sport. There's ground rules that everybody adheres to. They all know what those rules are. The funny thing is in sales, we don't have rules. Nobody's told us what the rules are, and so we just kind of make it up and push our way through. So let's go through some ground rules that you should be able to set up, and it's very simple to do, but every meeting needs to start with these rules, because if you don't, all these questions come into mind before the meeting even starts. Okay, so here's what we got to go through. Rule number one: why are we meeting? Simple as that. I know that sounds really simple, but why are we meeting? So your first conversation is going to be, you called me in because X, Y, and Z were the issues that you were running into. I know that we offer a couple of services that work through that and fix that, but we may not be able to fix that. But we're going to talk about some of those things. And I'm sure there's other things that you want to have questions about for me. And so the next rule is, hey, you're going to have some questions and I'm going to have some questions. So think about it this way. You say, here's why we're here. Here's what we're meeting about. The second thing is, hey, I know that you're probably, before we had this meeting, you probably jotted down a couple questions you wanted to get answered. I know I have a couple questions that I need to get answered before I can even tell you whether or not this is even a solution for you. Because if it's not, I want to be able to tell you it's not a solution. Okay. And so you're kind of having this, you're going to have questions. I'm going to have questions. That's a normal interaction that you should be able to have during a sales call. But lay that as a ground rule. I expect you to have questions for me. And I know that you probably expect me to have questions for you. That's it. Simple, just a simple statement. Doesn't have to be complicated. Just make it a simple question. The other question you might want to add is, what do you want to learn today? Is there anything you wanted to walk away from this meeting with so that you know all the information you need to know from me? So you probably have some questions. What do you want to learn today? And then just jot those down. Let them tell you. Well, I'm hoping to learn a little bit about how much it costs. Well, of course, we're going to talk about that. What else? Because they're always going to bring cost. That's it. That's the number one thing. Well, I want to know how much it costs. Every time. Guaranteed. But then what else? What other things do you want to learn today? And then when they give you another one, you say, okay, write it down. And then just like the last episode we talked about, use the word and they'll give you another reason. And then after they give you an answer, you're going to say, and just like we talked about in the last episode, what else do you have? And let them tell you some more. And then they tell you another thing and you go, and what else? Until they go, that's it. That's really what I wanted to look at. Okay. So you want to learn these things and you read those back to them. That's a great tool because they want to learn these things. So in your conversations, you need to make sure you cover those and answer those questions. Those are part of their questions. There's more questions to come though. Just remember that. The other thing is you want to counter that with saying, what I'm hoping to get out of this meeting today is, just like you have some things that you want to learn, here's what I want to learn. I want to learn a couple of things about your business. Number one, what is it that you're having the challenge with? What's causing some of those problems? And what have you kind of done about some of those problems? And start kind of talking through, here's the things you're hoping to get out of this meeting. By doing that, you're giving them a little prep of mental time to be able to think about what is it that they need to make sure they're ready to answer your questions with. Now, those are not specific questions that you're going to ask, but it's really like general, I want to learn a little bit more about some of the issues and challenges you're having so I can determine whether or not what we're doing is actually going to be a good fit or not. And then another thing you want to be able to say is, hey, here's the way this meeting's going to go. So we're going to go through all these questions. I'm going to go through questions. You're going to go through questions. But in the end, I want to be able to walk away from this meeting with a couple different outcomes. Basically, what I want to do is I want to be able to come to the end of this meeting and say, hey, we're a good fit. We should work on going to the next step. That's one of the options. This other option could be, I'm, you know what, after having this conversation, I'm not interested. And it's a hard no. It's okay. And I want you to make sure that you know, as a prospect, as a buyer, that it's okay. Okay. You don't have to say it that way. But basically, what you're going to tell them is it's okay for them to say no. And if you can make sure that they feel comfortable that they say no, they will say no easier. And you'll be like, okay, no problem. Because here's what that does, it saves you time later. Because if they tell you no at the end of your meeting, there's no follow up call, there's no follow up messaging, there's no, well, when are we going to meet again? There's none of that. It's they got to know. And hey, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm glad we had a chance to have this conversation. If I can help you again in the future, let me know. I'm happy to do it. That's it. There's nothing else to it. And you just saved yourself a whole bunch of time. Okay. So that's a really, really, really important step. Start every meeting with that. And then the last thing is, what are the things that is a showstopper for you? Something that you're not going to put up with. And I know that sounds like a little hard line, but it's along those same lines is I want a yes or a no. So the last part of that is the one thing I don't want to have is, besides a yes and a no, one thing I don't want to have is, let me think it over. I don't know what I'm going to do next. To me, that's a little bit of a waste of time, right? So what you want to do is you want to prevent that waste of time. So by saying to them, we're going to get to the end. We're going to go, yes, we're going to move to the next step, whatever that may be. We're going to decide on that. Doesn't mean we're closing the deal today. It could be just, we're moving to the next meeting. We're moving to this, whatever it is. Could be a no. And the last step could be, I don't know. I'm going to think it over. And to me, that's not an option. It's either going to be a yes or no. We're going to either move to the next step or we're not. And that's okay. And what you're doing is you're saying it nicely. You're going to say it nicely. But what you're doing is you're preventing this and you're setting the expectation of, I'm not expecting you to not make any decision after this, because making a decision and not making that decision is not a decision, right? So it's a no. So if you can say is, if you tell me I'm going to think it over, I'm going to take that as a no, and that's okay. So because if you're going to take it as a think it over, you're probably not feeling like this is a good deal, and there must be a reason for that. So you don't have to say all of that at this time, but when you go through the meeting and you get done with the meeting, what you're going to find is that when they get to the end and you say, okay, what do you want to do next? They're going to say to you, well, I think we need to meet, or we need to do this, or we need to, they'll tell you what the next steps are, or you can recommend if they're not sure. The other things they may say is, this doesn't feel like this is a good fit because of X, Y, and Z. Okay, that's perfect. But if they go, oh gosh, I don't know what we should do here. I feel like I want to think it over. You can very easily say, okay, that's fair. I understand you want to think it over. I think if you remember in the beginning, we talked about there's really no think it over. So my impression is that it's a no, and that's okay. And I'm kind of curious as to why you think it's a no at this point, because you're pushing them into that bucket, and they're going to have to explain why it's a no. And if they're saying it's price, it's this, it's that, that's okay. You have the option then to either ask some more questions, or you have the option to say, okay, if price and this, whatever those things are the issues that are causing them to say no, then you have the option to then say, all right, that's very helpful. I appreciate that feedback. If there's anything I can do in the future for you, let me know. I mean, you could shut it right down right there, or you have the option to ask some more questions. But in the end, you want to lay these ground rules. You want to be able to say, here's how much time we're going to take. Here's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to ask you questions. You're going to ask questions. We're going to go through all the details. I'm expecting at the end of this meeting a yes or a no, but I do not expect a think it over. If I get a think it over, I'm going to consider that a no. And that really lays the groundwork. It's like going to the baseball game and laying out those rules, or any sporting event. It lays those rules right out for them. And for you, you're all on the same page. It is the most useful tool that you have in your tool belt to be able to start a meeting with this, get people to understand what you're looking for and expecting, and what they're expecting, and laying out the ground rules. It'll save you a ton of time later. If you found this to be helpful, make sure you like and subscribe, because there's going to be more content like this coming in the future. If you could think of anybody who might need this information or is in sales and maybe doesn't understand these concepts, make sure you share this with them so that they have a chance to look at it and review it. And remember, slow down and close more.